Hi, and welcome to the Breakthrough Emotional Eating podcast. My name is Kristen Jones, and thank you so much for joining me this week. One of the things that I love about having a Facebook group is I am able to really kind of use the Facebook group as a kind of as a testing, kind of like a launch pad or a testing area where I can test, concepts and things that I think are challenging for people, and that I hope to be able to then address not only with the podcast listeners, but also within the free Facebook group that I run, as well as my paid membership. And I really want to be able to service all people in a way that's going to be able to give them things that are going to be things that are going to be timely for them, but that also are going to I can give them strategies and things that they can start doing right away to see a change in that behavior or in the results that they're getting. And with it being the holiday season, tomorrow's December 1st. This is being recorded on November 30th, it live in the Breakthrough Emotional Eating community. We're getting ready to hit lots of holiday parties, lots of get-togethers, lots of events, impromptu as well as planned, that are going to come up. And it can be very, very easy to find yourself kind of throwing your hands up in the air and being like, okay, well, I screwed up at that party, or I ate too much at this meal. I might as well fill in the blank. I might as well do whatever. I can just start over on January 2nd. And that is something that I really want. I feel like the key to not only losing weight, but maintaining your weight. And this is something that for people who are, whether you're in the process of losing weight or you want to lose weight, and your fear or the thing that you think of is, well, I don't even need to start because I'm just going to lose it and I'm going to gain it back again. I think this concept that we're going to talk about today is super important and very much a focus when you, not just when you're trying to lose weight, but when you get to your maintenance of how do I rebound when something doesn't go the way that I want? How do I not just throw the towel in? How do I get myself back on track? And I think that if people can figure out, okay, what is it within me that causes me to give up in those moments, and let 2, 3, 7 days, 21 days, whatever, let it go by before I get myself back on track. What is it within me that keeps that going, and how can I stop it? And we're going to talk about that today on the podcast, because I think it's something that is incredibly relevant, and it's especially relevant now that it's the holiday season. But I think it's relevant all the time, because we're going to be presented with temptation. We're going to be presented with things, with events and interactions that possibly are going to challenge us when it comes to our commitment to ourselves and our long-term goals. And how do we want to respond? Because we can pretend like everything's going to go perfect, but that perfectionism and that trying to be perfect is part of the problem. So we're going to be addressing all of that today. So thank you again for joining me on the podcast. And I am coming to you live from the Breakthrough Emotional Eating community on Facebook. That is the group that I founded and now run. And if you are not a member of that group, we have a whole bunch of our members here live in the podcast, or on live in the group, listening to this podcast being recorded. But if you're not a member and you're just, you've come across my podcast and you're like, this emotional eating thing, not sure I really understand or really know that much about it, but I think it might be an issue, you want to come join the group. So you can absolutely go into Facebook and just do a search and put emotional eating. My group will show up. But the name of the group is Breakthrough Emotional Eating. You can also just directly put in this link, www.facebook.com/groups/food breakthrough, and join the group. And it is absolutely free. Give away a ton of free stuff. and lots of options for further work if that's something that you're interested in, but you absolutely can access all of the free materials that we have. And I also have a free course that I it's not in that group particular, but I will give you information at the end of the podcast as to where you can access the food freedom video course that kind of teaches the basics of what I teach people, and how I teach people how to not only manage their emotional eating, but also lose the weight that they want. So it's kind of a little combo thing. So I'll give all that information away at the end of the podcast. And that's when I say the podcast, that means when it's recorded and it's released. For those people who are in the Breakthrough Emotional Eating group right now, that's something that I can give to you. I can put that in the notes, in the comments of this post. So let's get to it. So how do we bounce back when things don't go the way we want, especially, and we're going to talk about, and this is everything that I'm talking about today, and most of the things that I talk about in general are totally applicable to every aspect of your life. It's not, I just happen to teach this in relationship to weight loss and in a relationship to emotional eating, but it applies to every area of your life. It applies to your job. It applies to your relationships. How do we come back from when we've made a mistake or we have done something that we find we are disappointed in, that it didn't go the way we wanted? We made what we consider to be a mistake, or we did a behavior that's not something that we want to do. How do we come back from that? And in this case, we're going to talk about an overeat. So it could be a meal, it could be going to a party, it could be, just you had a plan and you didn't stick to your plan. And how do you not completely throw your hands in the air and just say, forget it, we're just going for it, we're just going to do whatever we want from here on out, because I let myself down? How do we not go down that route? Well, there is something called, and for those of you who are not familiar with Brene Brown is a social worker, and she's a researcher, and she does research on shame and on vulnerability. And she does a lot of work on just how we exist as human beings. And she's amazing. She's really, really very incredible. And she talks a great deal about what is called the shame cycle. And the shame cycle is something that every person goes through when they have let themselves down, or they've done something that they wish they hadn't done. And it's really important to differentiate between shame and guilt. So guilt is something that we will feel when we have done an action that we don't perceive as being something that we want to be doing, that maybe it's something that we wish we hadn't done. And we have regret of that. That guilt is usually related to an action. Shame is when we maybe have done an action, but we don't just look at it as that isolated action. We look at it as who we are, and that the shame is something that we turn on ourselves, that we then become, it's not the action that we did that was wrong. It was that we're wrong and we're bad and we aren't worthy. So that is when we turn on ourselves and we start to associate actions that we do with who we are as a person. And I will never forget this. As for those of you who don't know, I used to be a middle school teacher, and we did these when we had conferences. We never conferenced with kids individually. We always had group conferences. So all the students' teachers would come together, and we would have a group conference with the student and the parents. And it can be pretty intimidating sitting around, a little 12-year-old sitting around with all of his teachers, and they usually they're there because things aren't going well. And so, it's a lot of tension and a lot of stress, and it's hard on the kid. And I had a coworker of mine who I love to death, and she would always get so upset with other teachers when they would call a student lazy. And she said, them not doing their homework is a behavior. Lazy is a characteristic that you're giving that child, like that. And she would get so upset because she was like, we're labeling that. We're giving that child a label that is almost kind of attacking who they are as a person. And this is just a behavior. They've chosen not to do their homework. That was a choice, and that was a behavior they chose not to do. But let's not label that child and bring that child and put this marker on a child that will make them feel like there's something wrong with them at a very deep core level. And she would get so upset about it. And I remember thinking like, gosh, that's really true. Like, we are not our behaviors. Who we are as human beings are amazing, perfect, amazing. Absolutely. You're perfect exactly the way you are. Do we always do the right behaviors? Heck no, because we're human beings. And that's just part of being a human. But too often we associate things that we do with who we are in our hearts and in our character. And that's the first step, is we need to recognize that the behaviors that you do, and overeating at a meal, does not mean that there is anything wrong with you. It does not mean that you are not an amazing person. It does not mean that you're a great parent, grandparent, daughter, sister, husband, wife, whatever. You are absolutely exactly who you need to be. And an overeat or not eating on plan does not impact who you are at your core. But for most of us, we turn and attack that part of us, and that worthiness that we feel or don't feel, we go on the attack on that. And that's the first little blip that we make, is that we start making our behaviors coordinate and associate with who we are. And they are individual separate things. Our behaviors are not who we are as people. And so we have to remember that first. But there is this cycle, what is called the shame cycle. And the shame cycle is something that I'm sure when I say that, many of you are like, oh yeah, no, I know what that's all about. The shame cycle, when it comes to an overeat, is you start off with you overeat, or you eat off plan, and you have a sense of disappointment in yourself. So that's the first thing. Then you then start to feel that disappointment and that shame, that deep guilt or regret over what you did. And what goes along with that is the verbal, abusive beatdown that you give to yourself internally. You start saying bad things about yourself. You start putting yourself down. You start all of the horrible, horrible self-talk that you would never say to another human being, yet you readily say to yourself. So that's the second stage. The third stage is we then dwell and ruminate on that transgression that we had, that thing that we did. And again, all the while we're making it about who we are as a person. And so we just spin and we just continue to replay that mistake over and over and over in our heads. And the bad part is that while we're doing this, we learn nothing from this incident. We learn nothing because we're so deep in what is going on. We're so deep in that track of that cycle and that thought of like, oh, you did this, you did this, you did this. You're a horrible person. All of the horrible things that you say, all of those continue to replay and replay, and you don't even have the chance to even learn anything from what's happened. And then the last stage of the shame cycle is that you make the decision that you don't want to feel this way anymore. And so you want to cheer yourself up. And so what do? You go back and you repeat the same behavior because you don't want to feel this way anymore. And so whatever that behavior was that you did, whatever that thing was, whether it was an overeat, whether it was eating off plan, whether it was, eating just too much of something, you go back and you do that again because you associate that with, well, I can feel better for just a moment, and that's going to make me feel better. And then the whole cycle starts all over again. And for most of us, big time me and the way I was raised, that was the cycle of punishment that I went through. That was how I was, I was taught, like, when I did something wrong, let's just shame them and make them feel really, really bad. And then their behavior will change. And now we know that doesn't work. Human nature does not work that way. Our brains don't work that way. We don't work. That shaming piece does not work when it comes to behavior change. And that's what we really need to start to look at and realize, like, this is not, we can do the same thing over and over again. We just can't be doing this anymore. So I'm going to ask those people who are watching in the Facebook group, if you were raised in a household where shame and guilt was regularly used as a way to correct behavior, put correct in the comments. Just put correct, the word correct in the comments. If that was how you were raised, if you were raised and you find yourself doing that to yourself all the time, taking yourself through that shame cycle of, let me just beat myself down a little bit. Let me just continue to dwell on it, dig myself deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole, because now I'm sad and depressed and now I can't get myself out of it. And I'll feel better now if I just eat something, and I'll just do the whole cycle again. And for many people in the group, and I did a poll recently in the group to ask people about how long after an overeat, when, especially if they're on a plan, and doesn't matter if you're following my plan, if you're following any kind of plan, how long until you course correct and get yourself back on? And a lot of people, we were talking about 3 days, 5 days, a week, a month, 6 months. So a lot of people really have a hard time coming back, getting themselves back in line and back in their lane of what they're doing and how they're working to improve their life or change a behavior or change a habit. And so it really made it really clear to me that it was very, very obvious that this needed to be talked about, because so many people were working from that place of shame. I'm just going to go check over in the group to see what we have going on over here in the way of our corrects, and if we have people who are raised like me. all the shame associated with how we do things. And that really, for many people, it depends on, what religion you were. A lot of times, if you were, especially if there was a religion in your house, you were, taught to feel guilty, and that was going to change your behavior. And so we really need to watch that as adults, because it just doesn't serve us now. It just absolutely does not serve our purpose at this point in time. So what do we, and again, the cycle just continues and we keep doing the same thing. So it's really important to realize that shame oftentimes stems from perfectionism. And perfectionism is obviously when we try to do something and we want to be perfect, we want to do it, it's all or nothing. We have all or nothing thinking. It's either I'm in or I am so far off that I don't even know where in is anymore, that we just get ourselves so focused on, I'm going to do this. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need to do it right. And it's going to need to be done the first time. And I better get it right. And I think that's a lot of what holds people back from even trying to make corrections and make changes. And especially, I hear this all the time from weight loss clients that people have heard, they've heard me say this before. They, like my husband, my family, I don't tell anybody in my family when I'm trying to lose weight, because they've heard it so many times before. And I know they're doing the internal eye roll, and I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed that I've let my weight come back. And I just, I don't know how to correct that. I don't know how to let that go. Or I just know that's, that I if I can't do things right, I'm just not going to do them at all. And that perfectionism piece always is going to be related to our own worthiness and our own ability to look at ourselves and to realize that whether we do something right or wrong, it does not change who we are. I'm going to say that again. What we do, whether we do it right or wrong, does not change who we are. Other people may want us to think that it changes who we are and that it makes us a bad person or it makes us somebody that they can't trust anymore, or all the things. And that is absolutely not true. And if you feel that way, that is a limiting belief that needs to be addressed. Those types of beliefs will permeate their way into your life, and they'll cause you to be paralyzed because you're so afraid of, what if I don't do it right? What if I don't do it right? Well, then I won't do anything at all. And then we just keep doing the same behaviors that are not serving us and oftentimes are not healthy for us. So it's important to, again, remember that there is that connection between guilt, and guilt goes right. Guilt kind of is the friend of shame. But remember, guilt is not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to your thought. And guilt doesn't need to be, beaten over the head, but guilt is always associated with an event or a behavior. And we can feel, most of the time we do, if we do something that we deem as a mistake, we will feel guilty. But that's also then where we decide, okay, what's the lesson I'm going to learn from this? And when we're in shame, we don't care about learning a lesson. We're not even open to that. And that's a really important piece to then bring into the puzzle. So how do we stop this shame cycle from happening? Because it happens, and it happens before you know it, and you are knee deep in it and you can't get out of it. So how do we stop that shame cycle? And how do we stop turning one meal into a week's worth of poor eating or a month's worth of poor eating? And I say this because now at the holidays, it is so easy to look at your calendar and say, oh my gosh, I've got this party, I've got this party, I've got this party. And then the first one, you get off course and you either drink too much or you eat too much. And then you're like, well, I just might as well I'll wait till January 2nd. And then all of a sudden you are 10, 15 pounds up by January 2nd, and then feel worse about yourself. And then you're afraid, I don't want to go back. I don't want to even try again, because what are people thinking? Now I really am a failure. We're never a failure if we don't learn. We only are a failure if we don't learn, if we don't choose to learn. Every mistake, everything that happens, if we can learn from it, it is never going to be a failure. And failures are the only way we learn. It's the only way we learn and change. So we have to not get so hung up on that failure piece and just realize it is, as they say, fail, first attempt in learning. We get to decide, how do we want to change this? How do we want to make this different? So how to stop the shame cycle. So the first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge your feelings. You have to acknowledge your feelings. You personally have to acknowledge your feelings. Like, how am I feeling? Like, I feel blank. And bad is not a way of feeling. And we have to get a little bit better about describing, and be clear. How do I feel about what's happened? About the fact that I overate, about the fact that now I got on the scale and now I'm 2 pounds up. How do I feel about that? Acknowledging your feelings and not trying to bury and ignore and pretend like it's not there. That is not the answer. Brené Brown says that shame thrives in secrecy and in isolation and in not sharing with anyone. And so when we keep it quiet and we're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm just going to pretend like it didn't happen. That just allows shame to continue to grow and become even bigger. So we have to acknowledge our feelings first. Second thing, you have to start talking to yourself, because in that second phase of the shame cycle, we start that mental beatdown, that absolutely abusive language that we use with ourselves. We have to start talking to ourselves like we would talk to a friend, like you would talk to your children, or you would talk to your grandkids. How would you talk to somebody else if they came to you and said, oh my gosh, I just blew my diet, I just overate, I'm so blank? How would you talk to them? Certainly not the way you talk to yourself. We have to start recognizing. And one of the ways of doing that is to speak to yourself. It's going to sound super weird, but to speak to yourself in the third person. Use your own name, because it gives you psychological distance as you speak to yourself as a friend would speak to you. So making sure you use your own name, call yourself by your, and tell you, let's go. We got to do this. We are a good person. Let's get ourselves back on track. That type of language is what will definitely help you. So speaking to yourself as a friend would speak to you, or as you would speak to a friend, and then using your own name, speaking in the third person when you address yourself. Number 3, and this is where that whole secrecy piece comes in. Talk to someone you trust. It's when we keep it quiet, when we think if we just ignore it, it's going to go away, and the feelings and all the things are going to go away. That's where we get into trouble. So sharing with someone that you trust that this is what's happened and this is how I'm feeling and I need to get out of this. That's what we need to, that's the next step. And it's one of the reasons that I started the Big Free Group and I started my membership, is I wanted to give women a community of people so they did not feel alone. They did not feel isolated. They didn't feel like they were the only ones. I carried my emotional eating and I carried all that went along with it and all my eating disorders and all the things that I did. I carried that with me for 40 years by myself. No one knew. I thought no one knew. People knew because I knew that it was pretty obvious, but I didn't share it with anybody. I was so embarrassed. And so that shame just lived within me. And I just always felt shame. And then that shame spread to other areas of my life. And I didn't feel like I could do anything right because I didn't have this piece mastered. I couldn't do anything because I didn't share it with anybody. So all the shame just permeated all the areas of my life. So the group, whether you're in the free group, whether you're in the paid membership, these groups are here to be that trusted someone that you talk to, that you share. This is what happened. And I've seen people do it in the group, and the members are amazing in how much they support and how much they say, yeah, because the most powerful, and I just heard Brene Brown say this today, the most powerful 2 words that someone in shame can hear is me too. Knowing that you are not the only person is what can elevate and move someone out of the shame cycle so fast. Shame cannot exist where empathy is. And I know that in both my groups, there's such a huge, strong thread of empathy. And in the membership, I mean, we have coaching calls 3 days a week. You can come on a coaching call and you can share with the group live what's going on and share that and get that piece of me too, that empathy from everyone, because we've all been there. But we isolate ourselves, and that's where we really get into trouble. And again, that's where shame thrives. It thrives in isolation. Number 4, it's very interesting that, and I've heard this in relationship to depression as well, that when we reach out and we try to serve others who are less fortunate than us, it allows us to be able to be in gratitude, and gratitude for what we have. When we are able to help others who are less fortunate, we are able to then turn it around and be able to see all the benefit, all the gratitude, all the gratefulness that we have within us and all the things we can be thankful for by serving others. So reaching out and trying to help someone else when you're in that place can be really, really effective to interrupt that shame cycle, because gratitude and sadness cannot exist. They can't coexist together. We can't be sad and grateful at the same time. It just doesn't work. So it can really pull you out of that mental space. The 5th thing is to be kind to yourself. And that is a tall order. When you are feeling badly, when you feel like you've let yourself down, that is a tall order. That is not easy. It's not easy to do at all. But the piece that, and it's something that I have, it's one of the first things that I teach in my membership, it's one of the first lessons that we do is, and it's one thing that I talk about all the time and I give them every single week. I mean, if you're in my membership, you know, every single week you get a video from me that has potential affirmations and potential positive self-talk that you can give to yourself. And that's what we need to remember when we're in that cycle. We need to be kind to ourselves and we need to pull back and realize, okay, what are the positive self-talk, the positive affirmations that I know I possess? Where are they? I need to be saying them to myself. I need to be making sure that I remember that and I pull those things in. And that's what keeps me kind of grounded and keeps me back in my reality. And along with that, and this is something that I do personally with clients all the time. And I'm going to ask those people who are live in the group, if I've ever asked you to do this, yeah, put success in the comments. So if you're in listening on the podcast and you are a member of the membership, if I've ever asked you to do this, put success in the comments, because I do this with so many people. One of the things that we have to do when we are in a place, especially in that shame cycle, is we have to remember all of the positive past things, all the past successes that we've had. When we are in a place where we feel like we've done something wrong, we've made a mistake, and we are filled with shame, we cannot see all of the good that's happened to us prior to this moment. We are in this moment and it's like we are as present as anything. And all we're thinking about is, oh my gosh, what a horrible person I am. And we have to remember all of the amazing things that we've done throughout our lives to support ourselves. So if I've ever made you make a list, right, success, because I do that quite frequently where I have people write down, tell me all of the goals that you've reached and tell me every goal that you've reached in your life. And that could be like graduating from high school, getting a driver's license, getting married, having kids, getting a job, buying my own car, any of those things, moving out. Once you start to make a list of all of the things that you've done throughout your life and the goals that you've accomplished, it's incredibly empowering. And it all goes out the window when we make a mistake, but we have to have something like that. So I encourage everyone in preparation of when these times come, because they will come. We have to make a list of every goal that you've reached in your life thus far. Write it on a piece of paper, type it up, and have it in your wallet someplace. And remember, pull that out and read it and be like, man, like this is nothing. And I was just saying this on a call to somebody earlier. Like we've been, as human beings, we've been through much worse than this. So many, an overeat, going off plan. We've done so many more powerful things than this. And we've been through a heck of a lot more. This is nothing. This is nothing. We can handle this. But we have to remind ourselves. And so I have that list, make that list, have it there, carry it around with you and be proud of that. When we apply these things directly to our weight loss and we apply it to our emotional eating and how we want to change our habits and change how we feel about ourselves and how we look at ourselves, we have to make sure that this becomes kind of a routine for us and something that we're doing and that we're incorporating into our lives as often as possible, because these things are going to come up. You're going to have circumstances where things aren't going to go the way you planned. And again, because nobody's perfect, and that perfectionism piece is going to go out the window. We can't think that failure. I mean, I have definitely changed, and I try to promote that failure is something we need to lean into. We need to fail because that's how we learn. That's how we grow, and that's how we become a person. And there's no way for us to, the only way that something is a failure and that it's, and I don't even like even to think about something as a failure, because I think failure is a good thing, but failure is a great thing when you can learn from it. And so one of the things that I do in the Breakthrough membership, which is my private paid membership, and lots of people on the call they're in there. One of the things that I have done is I really try to anticipate and enable and empower my members to be able to take these opportunities when a failure happens or when something happens and it doesn't go the way they want. How do they come back for that? And so what I've done is I've created this, there's a lesson, they have a coursework that they go through, and the lesson in that coursework is called accountability enhancements. And what it is there's a series of worksheets that, and if I've made you do a worksheet, write worksheets in the comments, because I oftentimes will message people, oh, you need to do one of those worksheets. Because what that worksheet does is it makes you take what you perceive as a failure and it makes you look at it. It's not a secret anymore. It's not something that we hide. We don't isolate. We own it. We acknowledge it. And then we look at what's the lesson that I can learn, because that's how we move. That's how we move forward. And that's how we don't have one bad meal turn into 25 bad meals. That doesn't, that's not, one extra dessert doesn't turn into 5 bags of potato chips. Is we acknowledge it, we look and we see, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to change this? What can I learn from this? And so we have these, we call them thought work worksheets. And the two most common, there are 3 things that I focus on. And the first one is when somebody has an overeat, when they eat past satisfied. Second one is when they've eaten off plan and they don't eat according to their plan. They might not overeat, but they just don't eat on their plan. They don't stay with their commitment. And the third, surprisingly enough, is when people lose weight. That oftentimes when people lose weight, they have a very difficult time not overeating after they lose weight because of some of the thoughts that they have. And so I have these worksheets that are prepared that give them some questions to journal on. So I'm going to give you some possible things that you can ask yourself as these, if this, when an overeat happens, how do you start to address yourself? How do you look at what has happened and change it and make it something that's going to be a positive that you're going to learn from? So the first question is, what lesson can I learn from this? Like, what can I learn? Did I go too long before eating? Was I upset during the meal? Was I upset prior to the meal? Was there somebody who was triggering me during the meal and I didn't take care of myself by either getting up and leaving or saying something to that person? What was it that I think caused this to happen? Because I'm going to tell you all, an overeat doesn't happen just because the food's so good. It doesn't. It happens because there's something else going on with you, and there's something else. There's another thought, there's another belief, there's another emotion that's coming up behind it. And that's what's causing the overeat or the going off plan. So the questions a few of the questions that you can ask yourself is, did you use any strategies that you have been taught, whether it's through me or it's, through any program that you've been on, any weight loss program, depending on what you're doing? Did you use any of the strategies that can make you successful? Did you use any of those during the meal? And you just be honest with yourself. Did I do that? Did I actually slow down? Did I drink my water? Did I put my fork down? Was I paying attention? Did I take too much food? What was it? What was I using any strategies, or did I just kind of throw caution to the wind? And it's owning that, just being accountable and responsible to yourself. How were you feeling both before and during the meal? What were the emotions that were coming up? What was the conversation? We don't ever blame other people, but what were you thinking and what was causing you to feel a certain way that caused you to kind of vary off of what your goal was? Because, if you're somebody who's trying to lose weight, when you go into a meal, okay, we got to focus in, we got to do our stuff. Were you that focused? Did something come up? Did you let your mind wander? Did you let yourself not be present? And the last one, and I think this is really important. Why did eating more at this particular meal, why did eating more and avoiding the feelings that you were feeling or just giving into, I just want more, I just want this. Why did eating more override your desire to lose weight and to take care of yourself? Why did that happen? And if you say, I don't know, that's fine. But then I want you to just guess, because I don't know it's an easy cop out. Like that's like, I don't know. Kids do all the time. I don't know. That's not taking accountability. What do you think? Take a guess. take a guess at what you think it might be. And then start writing on that, start writing about that, and let it all come out. Let it flow out. Get those thoughts, get those feelings, get those beliefs. Remind yourself why, why am I actually doing this? What's the reasoning behind? What do I want to achieve? How do I want to feel about myself? One of the things yesterday, was it yesterday? No, sorry, Monday on a call. Sarah, thank you so much for saying this on our call the other day. One thing that one of the members said on a call that we were on the other day is she said, I want to go to bed proud of the decisions that I made throughout the day. And I thought that was just such a powerful statement and such an amazing, like, yeah, we all want to feel proud. We want to feel proud of ourselves. When you go to bed at night, you want to feel proud of yourself. You want to feel good. You want to wake up in the morning and you want to say, you know what? I really did well yesterday. I want to go get on the scale. I want to be accountable to myself because I did really well. I listened to myself and I made myself proud, not anybody else. Made yourself proud. Those are the kinds of questions, those are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking, especially after something like this happens. It's how do I get myself back on where I can start feeling proud of myself? Because we all know when we just decide to go into that cocoon and go into that secrecy mode and not say anything and be ashamed and be embarrassed, and I'm just going to pretend like this never happened, and then the cycle just continues, the shame cycle just continues to repeat and repeat, and you just spiral, you're not proud of yourself. We all want to feel that. And the only person that can get you back is you. And I've given you some guidelines and given you some tips and strategies to get yourself back. And that's where I want you to be. I want you to be able to take these things and use them and make sure that you are incorporating them into your eating, your thoughts about yourself, all the things that you do. And all of these things are all things that we reinforce all the time, not only in the big group, but in the membership as well, is how do we make ourselves proud of ourselves? What do we do? How do we do that? And how do we then have that support system? Well, you have the support system all built in, because the support system is those other people who are saying, yeah, me too. I want to feel that way too. Or me too. I've been there. I understand. That's the power of the community. And that's the power of not allowing shame to be a secret, to be something that we isolate from, and that we keep ourselves as if we've become a horrible person, because you're not. Your actions are one thing. You as a person, something totally different. So I hope that today's podcast has given you some things to think about. I hope that it has been helpful in the way that I've been able to kind of explain why we get into that negative cycle, what the shame cycle is, and then how to get yourself out of it. I think having that community and having those people to talk to who are going to have empathy and give you the me too, that's what's really important. So that's what all of my groups are about. It's about encouraging and supporting and being there for each other. And that is where shame then can go and be gone. And that's where it happens at one meal, and the next meal, you're right back on. And that is what's going to keep your weight. That's going to keep you losing weight, and it's going to keep you maintaining your weight once you get to your goal weight, because I think that's a huge concern for most people as well. All right, y'all. So as I mentioned earlier in the recording, the Food Freedom free course, which is a free course that I offer, it is available. It's actually available on my website. I don't talk about my website very much, but my website, go there. It's beautiful. Really do like it. It is, it's www.KristenJonesCoaching, and that's Kristen with an I-N. So Kristin. If you put E-N, you will not find me. So it's Kristen, I-N, Jones, Jones, coaching.com. And you will see a button as soon as you get onto the end of the homepage, and it says sign up for my free course. You want to go and take that free course, because that free course will give you an overview of what I do, how I teach people to lose weight and manage their emotional eating. And again, it's totally free, and it will give you all the basics. And there is a workbook that goes along with it. So please jump on over and sign up and get on to the food freedom video course and really start to move yourself in that positive direction. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's live in the group, as well as you listening on the podcast. And remember that community and that support is always there. Do not let the secrecy of shame override your life. There are people who are waiting to say, me too, and are waiting to support you. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And I hope to see you next week on the podcast. All right. Take care.